Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'll give you a few minutes to join. I really like the person I'm about to talk to. I've known him for a long time. He's a very respected journalist, and I think he has such an important perspective on what is going on at Fox News, why Tucker Carlson might have been fired. Frank is an Emmy Award-winning journalist. His career spans more than 3 decades, and there he is. Wow, you're so fast. Hi, Frank.
Hi there, Katie.
So nice to see you, and I really appreciate your taking the time to just kind of give us some perspective on these huge events in the world of journalism. I said yesterday, Frank, journalists love to cover themselves, so of course everyone has been going crazy, but I think this transcends just sort of journalistic gossip. This may be a watershed moment, certainly for Fox News. First and foremost, Frank, and by the way, I didn't mention that Frank is currently the Director of Strategic Initiatives at GW University in Washington, D.C., and School of Media and Public Affairs, I'm thinking, and founding director of Planet Forward, a user-driven web and TV project that highlights innovations in sustainability. But of course, you and I know each other from back in the day. I don't know if we overlapped at CNN. Did we? When did you start?
No, I think I started. Gosh, should I say this?
Yeah.
I think we were both 12. I started when CNN was 4 years old. It was 1984 when I first was there, and I was a young guy. You were there when? When did you leave?
Okay, so I joined in 1980 till 1984, and then I became a local news reporter in Miami. And so I don't think we overlapped, and I think that we our time together at CNN was short. And you were in DC, I was in Atlanta. I was a producer for Don Farmer and Chris Curl and an occasional reporter. And then I went down to Miami to get, my feet wet and to get more experience as a local news reporter. But Frank, I've always been such a fan of yours, and you're kind of journalist.
Likewise. I got to say that.
So, Frank, what was your role in the Dominion lawsuit?
I was asked to be an expert journalism witness for Dominion, and so I thought long and hard about that because I take journalism very seriously. The First Amendment, the right to be wrong, and I wanted to be very careful that I wasn't just sort of signing on to something that was going to take us in the wrong direction. I actually think that Fox News and a conservative perspective in journalism is a good thing, an important thing. We need more of that, actually. It's what the Wall Street Journal does, both on its news pages and its opinion pages. But as I looked into this, I thought that what had happened at Fox was so egregious and so wrong that what really mattered was accountability and a journalistic calling to account. And so I signed on. So what that meant is that I was asked to review depositions and exhibits that would be taken to trial. I was asked to write an expert report that went to the court and was ultimately shared with Fox en route to trial. And if this had gone to trial, I would have testified, not as a defamation expert, but as a journalism expert. What are the standards and practices? Are there such a thing? Did Fox violate them? What was that behavior like? How egregious was it? Was it egregious? And so that's how I was involved. So, and what I can talk about, and let me just say this clearly and for the record, I can talk about lots of those things, exhibits, statements, things you've seen that have been in the public domain. I cannot talk about things that have not been out there. Might have been brought up at trial, but I have no way of knowing that. That would have been the lawyer's job.
Understood. But Frank, if you had been called to testify, can you share with us what you would have said about the what Fox News was doing in terms of their reporting, in terms of some of the things that have been made public during the discovery process?
Certainly, it would be a pleasure, because I'm actually disappointed it didn't go to trial. I think this is something that I would have liked, this accounting and this public record to be out there, because what took place, Katie, was so egregious. And in the end, everybody suffered. But the others who suffered, and I want to say this, and I want to say this with real respect, is the Fox audience. Because the Fox audience knew what they wanted, or at least a large portion of them did, and they applied that pressure on Fox, and Fox gave them what they wanted. They pandered to them rather than giving them the information and the truth that actually they thought they were getting from Fox. And so in the end, no one is served by this. Here's what I would have testified. first that Fox violated the most fundamental principles of journalism. Tell the truth, vet your sources, be accountable for what you report, update your story, correct your mistakes, provide context, minimize harm. These are standards that are captured very clearly and succinctly by the Society of Professional Journalists. And every major news organization I know of, every major professional news organization I know of, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the NPR, the Associated Press,
The Washington
CNN,
Post. Don't forget the Washington Post.
the Washington Post, ProPublica, the Online News Association, they have written standards and practices, ethics guides that track these major things. Fundamentally, journalists are supposed to seek the truth. Fox did not do that. They ignored the truth, Katie. And we can talk about that, but they ignored the truth so that they could
maintain an audience.
Maintain an audience and maintain a narrative that they felt their audience wanted and that they were afraid of that they would lose that audience if they abandoned that narrative. And in fact, they accentuated. So they're putting Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani on the air again and again and again, despite the fact that literally dozens, actually scores of pieces of information, documents, fact messages came through that said these allegations that these people are making have no basis in fact.
And not only that, I mean, the level of hypocrisy that was unveiled during this trial through text messages, emails, correspondence from the highest levels of Fox News, from Suzanne Scott, the president of Fox News, to Tucker Carlson, to, I mean, almost everyone. And of course, the biggest offenders are said to be Maria Bartiromo, Judge Jeanine Pirro, Sean Hannity, and Lou Dobbs, sorry, but he's already been fired, so that's why I didn't mention Lou Dobbs. And I'm curious why you think Tucker Carlson took the fall, the most popular anchor on Fox News, certainly the most hypocritical one, if you pay attention to the texts, etc. But why Tucker Carlson?
I don't know. I was not in the room where they made the decision. But
you can speculate.
Well, and it may even be more than speculation, Katie, because from what I have seen and what the public has seen, so Tucker Carlson is saying many things at the same time. He says he detests Donald Trump and that he's demonic, that he's a destroyer, and yet he's maintaining his narrative on the air. He, in a lot of the texts that have been out there that you've seen, he's attacking the executives at Fox. His tone toward some of the people he's talking about in the texts that have been out there, Sidney Powell among them, are incredibly sexist. And I think that it's not unreasonable to speculate, which is now what I'm doing, which is to tie these things together and to say that when Fox put all these things together, never mind the controversies he's had in the past, where advertisers have been, have boycotted him, as in 2019, his Patriot Purge video that was very controversial.
The January 6th mashup that was completely misrepresented what happened.
Exactly. So it's a very big step for Fox, because Fox, as they have demonstrated and as has been seen repeatedly in this case, puts ratings and profits first. That's Rupert Murdoch's, that's his business model. He does that with all of his businesses. So for them to cut things, to cut ties, to fire, to dump Tucker Carlson, who is the highest rated show, the most profitable program they had, that's a very big deal. That suggests a very profound reckoning at Fox. Lou Dobbs was already fired. Tucker, his executive producer. Are other things going to come? I don't know, but it suggests to me that something profound is happening there. Whether they trim their sails and change the way they do business, Katie, meaning editorially, that would be a good thing. As I say, I think we need them, but man, that's a big outstanding question that we don't know at this point.
And I hate to say it, but it seems highly unlikely. They refused to. The press release they issued after they settled with Dominion was tepid at best in terms of its, I mean, really didn't admit they did anything wrong. And of
Yeah.
course, if all you watch is Fox News, Frank, there's nary a mention of this Dominion lawsuit. I think Howie Kurtz, who I don't know, I like Howie. I've known him for a long time. Even, I don't know how he lives with himself. He spoke about it, but there were only two small segments, I think, in the afternoon. Throughout the primetime lineup, nobody mentioned it. And that's one of the reasons, you mentioned that Fox viewers have not been served by this. That's one of the reasons I think 60% of Republicans, or some crazy number, still believe the election was rigged. They have never paid it to the piper. They have never admitted any wrongdoing, and they have never corrected the record.
So, Katie, there were 17 accused broadcasts. You asked me what I would have testified about. There were 17 accused broadcasts that went from the days immediately after the election through January 26th, which was in 2021, which is a show Tucker Carlson did when he had Mike Lindell, the MyPillow CEO guy, on, who again raised the issue of Dominion's voting machines. Remember, this trial was about Dominion. It wasn't about the broader allegations of election fraud. And during that period of time, there were 60, at least 60, and they were entered as exhibits, pieces of evidence where it was the Association of Secretaries of State across the country. It was the President Trump's own cybersecurity agency. It was the Attorney General of the United States himself. It was the Associated Press. It was 25 separate Dominion setting the record straight statements that they sent literally to thousands of different recipients over those 25 emails at Fox. None of those were fully, properly, or in any detail represented at all in any of those interviews and newscasts. And even when, after Sidney Powell, who had alleged all the things about, Dominion with the algorithm and all this other kind of stuff, she's pushed aside from the Trump campaign on the 22nd of November. She's still showing up on Lou Dobbs' show a month later, saying the same things. And one of the things that I would have talked about, that you know very well because you do this, so do I, in our business, one of the journalistic things we do as interviewers is we say to people, well, how do you know that? We push back, we challenge.
Right, of course.
There was not only was there no challenge, there wasn't even a mention of it. So in the middle of all of this, Maricopa County in Arizona and the state of Georgia and Raffensperger, right? Okay, he got into big trouble with Donald Trump, but he still had a real job with an official position.
Right.
And he happened to be a Republican. They audited, they checked again. And the votes, in the print votes, the printed ballots, reaffirmed what the machines said. In the middle of all these allegations, you will never even hear that on any of these broadcasts. So again, I'm not a defamation expert, but what would have happened at trial was the idea of showing actual malice. So you have to show at least a willful disregard for the truth. $787.5 million that Fox paid spells guilty. Okay? Whether the jury would have gotten there, we don't know. We'll never know that. But there was a very demonstrable, and that's what all this traffic showed, a demonstrable and incredibly disturbing, willful disregard of the truth. That's why the Fox audience, I say, was so poorly served.
But again, even more poorly served because this wasn't covered. So the Fox News viewer is totally oblivious to all of this information. If your sole source of news is Fox News or other far-right news outlets.
They're right up there with Korean state broadcasting right now with this.
So, and why didn't Dominion demand an on-air apology? I would have said, I almost would have said, screw the money. Every hour, this is what the host or anchor has to say about what they did. They have to compare what they said privately with what they told viewers publicly. I mean, I really would have made them accountable for lying.
Well, look, I would have loved to have seen that too. For every hour, on the hour, for the same amount of time that they misrepresented the story, they should have been correcting the story, right? Again, one of the things that I would have testified to, a core component of journalism, you and I both know this. I know you've never been wrong. I've been wrong once or twice.
I have been wrong plenty, Frank.
You better say so. You owe your audience. We hold everybody to account. We are so full of ourselves in the media, right? But and we're not going to hold ourselves as accountable as we want to hold everybody else. Get out of that. Forget that. So, I mean, look, Dominion went to trial, and I can't speak for them. I've never spoken to the corporation, and I won't. But they sued Fox to recover damages for the business they lost and for the incredible damage
to their
that
reputation.
And the individuals who worked there. They were subject to hate mail. They were subject to all kinds of bots and abuse online, to horrible physical threats. And I'm told, again, I don't know this, but I'm told that a whole bunch of people who worked at Dominion, they were Fox viewers, they were Republicans. So how weird is that? So, Dominion was trying to say, we got to maybe, I don't know if this business survives, but, so again, I would have loved to see that apology and that on-air thing too. But as I say, this amount of money, more than $750 million, spells an apology.
It does to most people, but as I said, what I worry about is, does it really show it to Fox viewers? And
well, they now know that Tucker's gone.
Right.
You can only ignore so much for so long.
Yeah. What about the Smartmatic, the upcoming Smartmatics lawsuit, which is for $2.6 billion or $2.7 billion, twice as much as Dominion Voting Systems? And then you have this other Abby Greenberg. Did I get her name right?
Grossberg. Abby Grossberg.
Abby Grossberg, right? Abby Grossberg, who is suing, who was a producer first for Maria Bartiromo and then on Tucker Carlson's show. What do you think is going to come out? Where, everybody's talking about the smoking gun. What other things about that could be held against Tucker Carlson will surface?
Well, first of all, let me come back to Abby Grossberg for a minute, and I'm really glad you raised that, because it goes back to your first question, like, why Tucker first? I think this was probably, again, I'm speculating, but I think this is probably a big part of it, because what she alleged about sexism and sexual harassment and all the rest, you can see in some of the emails and texts and various things that have been released as a result of pretrial motions and the motion for summary judgment included in there as exhibits. And that's consistent. Again, I can't speak specifically, but it's consistent with what I've seen.
Right.
Now, we don't know what we haven't seen, because, did the Fox lawyers go through a whole bunch of stuff that weren't relevant and, was
or had been redacted for whatever
reason?
Well,
the redacted stuff they would have seen, but the point is they were examining a whole bunch of Tucker Carlson's internal correspondence, and he is unfiltered, and the language that he uses about people, some of which you've seen, it's been out there, is quite crude, shall we say? I mean, and that's putting it mildly, Katie.
Yeah.
So, all right, you've got Abby Grossberg's case, you got the Dominion case, you got all the other public stuff that's going on. So I think there are more axes to fall here. The first fell on Tucker because his neck was, extended most dramatically across the chopping block because he put it there. Where it falls with some of these others, I don't know. But Fox's legal problems and their very big legal bills and the settlements they're paying, those are not done yet. Those are not done yet. I think they have another half dozen suits against them.
And will it cause Fox any pain? I mean, they're a hugely wealthy corporation. So I guess the question is, at what point are they going to really feel it? Will it have an impact?
Boy, that's a great question. You'd think it has a big impact when it's more than $750 million, and that's just one settlement. Although I did read the other day, you may have seen this.
A billion. Yeah.
Quarters of a billion, $787.5 million.
Yeah.
My math, that's more than $750 million, and that's one settlement. And I read somewhere the other day that some of this is it's tax deductible. It's like your mortgage. It's like, what? But I think it's going to hurt? Does it hurt them enough reputationally? I mean, what hurt them was when they fired Tucker and the stock price went down 5%. It's like, wait a minute. Why didn't it hurt them when they had to dish out this money because they had so egregiously butchered the truth? So I think it will hurt. Logic suggests it will hurt, but logic doesn't always work here because Fox has this very dedicated base that is the same base and a lot of them anyway, that say, yeah, I know Aunt Millie just died, but COVID's a hoax.
Right.
I know you've got all these things and you've done all these audits, but the election was stolen. This is why facts matter. This is why journalism is so important. And in the idea of minimizing harm, not only did this coverage harm Dominion employees and the company, it harmed the country. It harmed our confidence in our democracy. And that not only poorly serves Fox's viewers, but it poorly serves the rest of it.
Do you think that Newsmax or One American News will pick up Tucker Carlson and try to make hay with this?
They could. He'll be expensive, but they could. Look, there is no way, and I know Tucker when he was at CNN. I've known Tucker.
He's a very different person back in the day.
Person. It's very disappointing. When he was at CNN, he was smart, he was clever, he was glib, he was young, he was funny, but he was not hateful. And I'm very sad to see what's happened because he's a very smart guy. And obviously look, you and I know we've had the microphone, we've had a camera. It's an immense responsibility. You really do affect people's lives. Does he show up on the ticket with Donald Trump? Does he become, does he become his
even though he admits to hating him with a passion?
They've sort of reconciled in recent weeks, apparently. I mean, expediency is a beautiful thing, or whatever is driving this. I can't explain that. But one way or the other, Tucker is effective, and he's, whether you like it or not, he's got a message that he wants to deliver.
And he does it in if you like his style, in a way that's entertaining. But I also think it's, what's become so commonplace now, especially on cable news, is this engagement through enragement, really trying to appeal to, our lesser angels. And is that the expression? But some people say to me, hey, MSNBC is just as guilty as Fox News. And I often try to explain to them, yes, it's opinion, but I do not think that it's opinion based on facts. And what do you think about the comparison when people make it to you?
Well, sometimes I think it's fair to say that MSNBC is way out there and they're very opinionated. I draw two distinctions, and I want to be really careful because I'm sure that some of your viewers are Fox viewers and watch it all the time or some of the time and are popping by or whatever. And we should make this a conversation that's an inclusive conversation. As I say, I really do believe there's an important place for a Fox, and in fact, when they went on the air, Katie, fair and balanced, we report, you decide, they dropped those slogans and they went away from that ethic about the time that Barack Obama was elected. So,
by the way, I'm not sure they ever followed that motto, Frank, in fairness. More than now, I would argue. But back to your question, what Fox does, and I watched hours and hours and hours of it, not just the accused broadcast. And I try to watch it as well because I'm interested in seeing how various journalists or commentators, I should say, are framing certain issues. So I want to hear from those anchors.
Right. Fair enough. And they have actually some very good journalists there. They really do, who work on the news side. Look, I think what I would say is what Fox does is it's very grievance driven. And what disturbs me, which I don't see as much on MSNBC, occasionally, but not nearly as much, is the demonizing and the otherizing. This idea that there's this kind of conspiracy, these people who want to take your lives away, take your guns away, that they're out there. In one of Tucker's, it's actually very interesting, almost ironic. On the 19th of November, 2020, is when he delivered his little monologue where he said, Sidney Powell, if you got the evidence, produce it. I've asked her, she hasn't done it. And that was used actually as a critique of other Fox coverage that was so in the tank. Mm-hmm. Later down in that monologue, Katie, he says, we stand for the truth, they don't. Now, I don't know who the they is, but I'm going to assume it's you and me and the New York Times and CNN and others. And that otherizing, that there's always somebody out there who wishes you ill and is doing something bad and plotting and conspiring, that's what I find troubling if it's not based on fact, if it's just based on anger and grievance.
And in fairness, knowing that we might have some Fox viewers watching, I mean, does MSNBC, which is decidedly progressive in its coverage, does it otherwise in the same way? I mean, I think I could probably point to instances where that same tone and that same dismissiveness and that same marginalization is coming from the other side as well.
I mean, look, I think Rachel Maddow is brilliant, but she can be condescending. She can be completely judgmental. She can be, if she's talking about conservatives. But I have to tell you, and I try really, really hard to look through kind of as dare I even use the word objective a lens as I can on this. The grievance and almost a hatefulness at times that I hear in some places on Fox, and the complete disregard for facts, I don't pick up
it's unparalleled.
It's unparalleled, and certainly in this case.
You mentioned objectivity, and I'm curious. I have to ask you quickly about CNN. They have been trying to be less sort of the engagement through enragement, less the anti-Trump network, and trying to be sort of honestly going back to the roots of CNN, which is very difficult to do, I think, because our politics have changed so dramatically. But do you think there is actually still a business model in just reporting the news and not having it colored by opinion?
Ooh, on cable? That's sort of the question of the year, right? I mean, cable subscribers are declining because people are cutting the cord. People have more information options all the time.
They're also very old,
They're very old, so
not very old, just old. Let's give ourselves a break, Frank.
I prefer to think vintage is the
mature.
That's going to be the experiment. I mean, CNN overtly says we're trimming the sails and we're going to go back more to the news and less toward opinion, and that's why as I understand it, that's why Don Lemon's gone. I mean, there was a lot of backroom drama too, but fundamentally, and he had this interview with this guy Ramaswamy, this Republican candidate, that was a slugfest, and they've been told, the anchors have been told, please don't do that anymore. You're supposed to be reporting the news, not becoming the news. Now, the question is separate. A separate question that you ask is, will that work with the audience in the cable world? We'll see. I desperately hope so. And maybe, Katie, maybe. I like to call myself a glass half empty optimist. So the glass half stuff we're talking about. But the optimist in me hopes that just maybe there's an audience, a substantial audience, a loyal audience that says, please give me the facts. Please tell me what's going on. Please put your opinions to the side or make it clear. And maybe there's a reckoning at both CNN and Fox, each in their own way.
But Frank, I can't help but point out, this is not with the Republican Party represented by George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, the Bob Doles, whoever you want to hearken back from days gone by. This is a Republican Party where the leading candidate for president of the United States in 2024 is Donald Trump, an individual who himself is lying to the American public. He is the major perpetrator of the rigged election lies. And so, I sympathize with journalists who are trying to it's not like you're looking at two different philosophies about how to govern or how to solve some of our intractable problems, like immigration reform or what to do about the deficit, where you can have actual differences of opinion and discuss these things intelligently. You have one side lying. So as a journalist, you're going to look biased if you call that side out. And it's sort of a no-win proposition.
Completely. It's sort of a downward spiral, because the more you do that, the more you call them out.
The more people think you're not objective.
Right. You know, I covered the White House during the George Herbert Walker Bush period of time. And if the president misspoke or his press secretary misspoke, they actually would walk around and say, oh, well, what the president meant to say, if they made a mistake. And there was spin. There's always been spin.
Right.
Always. That goes with the territory. But it wasn't, you know, till Trump came in there that the White House became sort of the bastion of alternative facts. And we're just going to double down on whatever is said. And we'll call you, those who are trying to supposedly report the story, you're the problem. You're the enemy of the people, right? You're just fake news when you say something we don't like. So
it's such a conundrum, Frank.
No, it's maybe we're going to live with this world now, Katie. You know, the press in Europe in much of Europe anyway, is a very partisan, divided press. We had that in the early days of the Republic in this country. We had a partisan press, and they reported what they wanted from their perspective. You know, Alexander Hamilton himself penning his own, you know, his own op-eds without even signing them in some cases. And then what? What it means is that we, the people, are going to have to decide.
So do you think Don Lemon deserved to be fired?
I wasn't in the room on that one either, Katie, but I call it accountability. I think that CNN said to him, quit playing opinion man, play anchor man, play newsman. Quit being a source making the news and just report the news. And I think he reverted to form. They've seen that again and again. It's not like he wasn't warned. It's not like they didn't give him another chance. They reassigned him from the primetime show. A lot of networks would have fired him right out. Then they put him in the morning, and he had this whole bad thing with Nikki Haley on, you know, if she's 51 years old and she's past her prime or whatever nonsense he was talking about. Huge trouble over that, and they gave him a day off or two to think about it, and then they reinstated him. And clearly they said enough is enough. And despite CNN's efforts to make nice and the comments that, you know, the statement they finally put out, it's clearly nasty.
And on my final note, in the category of men behaving badly, Jeff Shell, the CEO of NBC Universal, stunning to me that at this point in time, following the Me Too movement, following this new understanding of an abuse of power and a redefining of the word consensual, given the power dynamic, that someone like him would engage in this kind of behavior. And maybe he stopped after Me Too, who knows? But I was just so shocked, and I continue to be shocked at these men who never seem to understand there is a certain protocol and a certain way you comport yourself professionally, and there will be dire consequences if you don't follow those rules. What the hell, Frank?
Well, I am one of those men. I mean, I don't do that. And I don't, it should not be inevitable. I share it's like, how many times does this movie need to play for you to realize that you can't do this?
Is it just hubris, Frank?
I don't know. It's hubris, it's power, it's money, it's biology, it's stupidity, it's a bunch of those things. But this is why, you know, maybe Monday is yet another, and you know, because you've lived pretty close to this, Katie. Men are slow learners. But I come back to one word: accountability. And that's what's happening here. And whether it's Don Lemon or Jeff Shell or Tucker Carlson, you know, you can be pretty stuck on yourself, but maybe you don't get away with it forever. You know, it takes a long time sometimes, but it's really depressing that we are still having to have this conversation.
Well, it will be interesting to continue to watch the journalism landscape evolve or devolve, depending on your perspective. And Frank, it's so great to talk to you. I really appreciate your time and perspective. And I hope I get to see you soon, Frank.
Yeah, well, likewise. You see, this is why you're doing this. It's a good thing.
Well,
And
I enjoyed it, and I think it's important to have intelligent conversations with people who are really smart and insightful. So I really appreciate your time, and I think people watching, I hope, get something from these conversations as well.
well, I just want to come back to the glass half empty optimist here, because I do think that there's accountability. I do think that we have waves in our history. And we're going through a very challenging time now for a number of reasons, and we're not the only people on the planet or country on the planet that's doing that. And I think and hope we'll come out of this. I hope we come out smarter. There are any number of challenges. But, you know, there are so many good people doing
Oh my God, I agree.
that we shouldn't lose sight of that.
No, I agree. And so many great journalists out there, and I read them every day, and I watch them, and I listen to them doing incredible work. I think just as the landscape has become more fragmented, what's happened is that, you know, to be guaranteed at least some slice of the pie, you have to appeal to rabid viewers. And I think the mostly moderate people and who are kind of want solutions and are reasonable and are not extreme on either side are, well, at least in cable news, are not being served. And I think that's what CNN is trying to do. But the big question is the genie out of the bottle? And is the kind of news that certainly I was raised on, that I tried to practice, is it, you know, is it on life support, and can it be resuscitated? I guess that's the big question.
There'll be a flight to quality. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Frank. Bye, everybody. See ya.
Hey.
Bye.